Part 138. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1376. The third diamond turned to ashes. The fourth diamond was reduced to ashes. The fifth diamond turned to ashes. After burning nearly 10 diamonds, Greed barely mastered the limited wishing spell. He could use this spell to make the animal model he needed. Both division commanders expressed satisfaction with this progress. Only Cyrilla expressed great dissatisfaction. First, do we have to use magic to make these pigs? It's so expensive, it's really expensive, can't we use other methods? For example, use surgery, or something. Surgery is so cheap. From start to finish, it only takes wild boar, and wild boar. As for the feed for raising wild boars, the manpower to care for wild boars, and the treatment during surgery, these things have no cost at all. Much cheaper than diamonds and magic materials. So much cheaper. Although Gretel is considered a rich man among the elves, he has 3 copies, now it is more than 4, and the resources that lead directly to the legend can be used, but it is not wasted like this. That's a diamond. Diamond. Gretel gave her a smile that was uglier than crying. He also wanted to use surgery to create an animal model of tetralogy of Fallout. He really wanted to do it. Not to mention the cost issue, in the process of making animal models, you must hone your surgical skills, and you must also face various abnormalities and emergencies of the heart during surgery. These skills and experience will all be useful when it comes to surgical treatment. If he could use surgery to create animal models, why wouldn't he do it? The problem is, he won't. Studying the heart is different from studying other organs. If you are not careful, you will die. The previous patent ductus arteriosus, making animal models, has exhausted his ancient efforts. Let alone tetralogy of Fallout, even if he took it apart one by one and made animal models separately, he couldn't start now. How to treat ventricular septal defect? Big chest opening? Or a small incision? Or use vines to drill in and directly cut out the room divider? What to do if you have pulmonary artery stenosis? Cut out a piece of the pulmonary artery and sew it back on? Or just sew without cutting? Or should I tie a band around the outside, and when the piglet grows older, this section will naturally become narrower? Will blood clots occur during the cutting and suturing process? If there is a blood clot here, then a pulmonary embolism or something will happen in a matter of minutes. And the most difficult thing is to straddle the aorta. Who can tell him how to move the aorta to the right and front, directly straddling the outflow tract of the left ventricle and the right ventricle? Of course, even if these problems are solved, there is still a problem of order. Which one to do first and which one to do last? After which one is done, what will the heart look like and what will be the changes in hemodynamics? Based on these changes, how can you prevent your heart from stopping when you do the next one? There are so many problems to be solved here. Not to mention that he had never done anything about the animal model of tetralogy of Fallout before. Even before he time traveled, he had never seen any relevant papers in any Chinese journal. Gretel estimated that if he had to use surgery to create an animal model of tetralogy of Fallout, a shocking number of piglets would die. Not to mention 10 or 20, even 30, 50, 1 or 200, are not enough to kill, that's it, still with the support of healing. Even if Greed is so hard-hearted that he can kill thousands of mice in one go and crush countless chickens and stuff them into centrifuges for the sake of doing research, that doesn't mean he can do this. To rashly kill animals without making theoretical inferences or preliminary research is called causing unnecessary killing. It's called massacre. However, when Greed drew hundreds of drawings and wrote dozens of drafts of surgical plans, writing and overturning, and writing, and still had no clue, he became a little anxious. The teacher's progress is very fast. Recently, nuclear magnetic resonance has become somewhat popular. Although he is still trying to determine the magnetic field strength in detail, the teacher has been able to create a gradient magnetic field and a corresponding vertical magnetic field. If I fall behind the teacher, if the teacher has achieved results, I still have no direction here. 1 diamond and 1 Farlow pig, directly used for surgery, he is not so generous. I need to think of something, I need to think of a better way. Gretel was bored in the laboratory and thought over and over again, then ran to the library of the Magic Academy and flipped through the books. Finally, run to Elder Fahim. Elder, he asked sincerely. Is there any way to summon what I need in the Emerald Dream? When conducting experiments, do they operate according to the laws of nature, rather than according to my thoughts? Since the eldest prince can study spells in the Emerald Dream and advance to legend in one go, he should be able to do the same. If you want to study spells or other things, then, theoretically, these summoned things must operate according to the laws of nature. It couldn't be a damned thing. Gretel thought to himself, it has to live, it survived. It goes against the law. When it is verified in reality, the damned one is still dead, and something big is going to happen. Elder Fahim smiled happily. He patted Greet on the shoulder, smiled so much that his white beard and eyebrows trembled, and every wrinkle stretched out. I was just wondering when you would ask about this method. Well, it's actually very simple. First of all, your heart must be calm. Elder Fahim talked a lot, and he summarized it in 2 articles. One is that the mind is peaceful and motionless, like the surface of a mirror. The Emerald Dream is deeply affected by the host's mind. If the host's mind is wandering, the things inside, especially the things summoned by the host, will keep changing. Only when the presiding officer is determined and can stand by and watch without deliberately disturbing, can the things summoned evolve according to the laws of nature. The second is that the host must have a clear understanding of the laws of nature. The clearer and more thorough it is, the more the things it summons will evolve in a regular way. If the host himself is confused, he doesn't know what kind of things he creates. When practicing, you can start with simple things. The elder also gave him a bunch of suggestions. For example, boil a pot of water and cook a meal. If the water can boil normally and the cooked meal tastes normal, it shows that you have good control and can proceed. Otherwise, you have to practice again and again. Gretel thanked the elder, reviewed the knowledge of cardiothoracic surgery, and fell into the Emerald Dream. When he opened his eyes facing the vast rainforest on a towering mountain peak, he suddenly burst into laughter. What is this? In order to save a few diamonds, let's have a dream first? There will be a big push in a few days. Due to copyright requirements, the cover will be temporarily changed. Don't panic. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geolan 2020. Chapter 1377. Chapter 1372 Gretel, I dreamed of killing a pig. Whether it is to save diamonds or to cause less killing, Gretel still has to carry out this emerald dream steadily and step by step. He looked around, opened his arms, and suddenly jumped up. Soaring in the air, it suddenly turned into a silver dragon, its huge wings covering the sky, riding the mighty wind on the mountains, gliding towards the rainforest below. Nature embraced him lovingly. The long wind lifted him up, the clouds surrounded him, and the forest beneath his feet swayed, making the sound of forest waves with joy. In the rainforest, a colorful bird took flight and flew ahead to guide him. Gretel flew down under an ancient tree according to his memory. With a gentle wave of his hand, the soil surged into walls, condensed into stones, and built into a laboratory to his liking. Ah, how convenient it is in the Emerald Dream. Gretel smiled happily. Following Elder Fahim's instructions, he first condensed a kettle and boiled a pot of water for himself. The firewood crackled, the water splashed, and the steam steamed. Greet concentrated slightly, summoned mercury and glass, took out a mercury thermometer with his hand, and inserted it into the kettle. 100 degrees, good. After boiling the water and cooking, Greet adjusted his mentality and officially started the experiment. As soon as his mind moved, a colorful tiger walked out of the jungle with elegant steps, lowered his head and rubbed his hand. Well, please, go ahead. Greet rubbed its head. The hair was stiff, as if he was stroking a nylon brush. The tiger's throat rolled low, and he turned around and disappeared into the jungle. Soon, an earth-shattering roar sounded. Greet waited patiently for half an hour while taking care of the laboratory, preparing the operating table, shadowless lamp, sterilization facilities, and surgical equipment. When everything was over, the tiger's roar could be heard outside the laboratory. Greet walked out and took a look, only to see the mighty tiger escorting a group of wild boars, squatting at the entrance of the laboratory. A big, sturdy boar, 2 or 3 adult sows, 5 or 6 half-grown piglets, and a group of little cubs running around with melon skin stripes on their bodies. He was trembling with fear, not daring to move under the guard of the tiger. Very good, in the short term, it's enough. This is what Elder Fahim taught him: try to use the natural laws of the Emerald Dream instead of creating it yourself. It's not that Gretel can't summon a piglet, but compared with the piglet that was driven over by the tiger in the Emerald Dream, it's a little less agile and a little less natural. After all, the former relies entirely on his own cognition, while the latter relies more on natural memory and the operation of laws. Thank you for your hard work. Gretel smiled and scratched the tiger's forehead, giving it a ray of nature's power as a reward. Then he walked into the herd of pigs and brought out a little cub with melon skin stripes that was less than 3 months old. Well, it's a bit heavy. He carried the piglet into the laboratory, cleaned, fixed, prepared the skin, anesthetized, and intubated the piglet. When conducting experiments in Emerald Dream, there is no need for someone to watch the ventilator or someone responsible for anesthesia. It is so convenient. Then, Gretel summoned a large flow chart, pinned it on the laboratory wall, and clapped his hands. Ventricular septal defect animal model, the first experiment, begins. For the first experiment, it must be a big open chest, the field of operation is open and the place for doing things is large, and there is no need to build a dojo in a snail shell. As for the traumatic surgery and slow recovery, please, this is not an experiment in reality. Besides, even if we conduct experiments in reality, there are still treatments available. Cut the skin, cut the muscles, make a midline incision on the sternum, cut the sternum with a hacksaw along the midline, and the thoracotomy squeaks. After entering the chest, Greet stretched out his hand, and a piece of wet gauze appeared naturally on his hand, pushing the piggy's right lung to the posterolateral side. Well, the next step is to cut open and suspend the pericardium longitudinally to expose the heart. Greet was already very familiar with this operation when he was making animal models of patent ductus arteriosus. At this moment, his hands were flying, and he was crossing obstacles one by one with ease. Make purse string sutures at the right atrial appendage. Forget about suturing, guide the heart, and grow it in this area, don't let blood leak. Clamp the auricle and cut the auricle. Turning his right hand, a cold thorn-long needle penetrated straight into the middle of the purse's suture, passed through the right atrium, and quickly inserted into the right ventricle. At this point, Gretel paused his hands and took a deep breath. The hardest part is coming. He flew out a mage's hand and gently fixed the piglet's heart. Visually observing the heart rhythm, the long thorn needle turned and was quickly inserted into the left ventricle in a direction perpendicular to the interventricular septum. The young pig under his hand suddenly trembled. All parts of the heart under the gaze were trembling rapidly and uncoordinatedly. At the same time, the heart monitoring equipment that had been attached to the piglet's body screamed hoarsely. It's terrible. Ventricular fibrillation. Greet immediately threw down a bolt of lightning without even thinking about it. Thank God, thank God, thank himself, he has developed electric defibrillation magic before, which can deal with this situation very well. 1 generator defibrillated, 2 generators defibrillated, the piggy was covered in smoke, but it was not rescued. Greet sighed and had no choice but to break the jar. Cure fatal injuries. As the white light fell, the piglet's vital signs began to stabilize and his heart began to beat again. The problem is that the part that was just cut apart, except for the part that is held up by the sternum expander, quickly starts to grow back together. In other words, what he just did. All for nothing. Greet let out a long sigh, resigned himself to his fate, withdrew the long thorn needle, took out the sternum expander, and let the piglet grow on its own. In order to get accurate experimental results, he had to catch another piglet and come back to continue working. Step by step, there was no problem until the interventricular septum was pierced, thank God. It seems that the unlucky piggy just now had either a physical problem or some strange place that it hit when it pierced the interventricular septum. Gretel silently praised nature. Then, the long needle of the thorn suddenly expanded and bited the interventricular septum hard, biting a perfect circular gap with a diameter of 5 millimeters. Healing. White light followed immediately. It penetrates the outer wall of the heart and falls on the interventricular septum, guiding the defect to stop bleeding and close the mouth. It can't grow well, it can't grow back to its original shape, it can only stop bleeding, it can only heal in place. This action, which went against the nature of the healing technique, made Gretel concentrate with great concentration, and a thin layer of sweat broke out on his forehead. The white light of the treatment disappeared, and he tried to feel it with echocardiography to confirm that the ventricular septal defect was created. Just after he breathed a sigh of relief, he jumped up again. Damn it! Piggy's heart rhythm is abnormal again. How many pigs are going to die today? Please give me a monthly ticket. What the hell are 404 monthly passes? You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1378. Gretel screamed, and he caught all the wild boars in the litter, including the cubs and half-grown wild boars, and performed the surgery. 2 animals died due to intraoperative hemorrhage. The puncture device damaged the right atrium and vena cava respectively, resulting in tearing and bleeding of the right atrium and vena cava and death. 1 animal died from ventricular fibrillation. After the puncture was successful, ventricular tachycardia and ventricular fibrillation developed, and intrathoracic defibrillation was performed 3 times. After slowing down of the heartbeat and spontaneous ventricular rhythm, he was given stimulation surgery, adrenaline replacement plan, 3 times, but he could not be saved in the end. After opening the chest, 1 patient was found to have severe pericardial adhesions, and then his breathing and heartbeat slowed down and he died. 1 patient died of congestive heart failure 8 hours after the operation. An autopsy revealed obvious congestion in both lungs and liver. The ventricular septal defect diameter is 10 millimeters. There are 7 left, and thankfully they all survived. As for how long it can live, and whether there will be obvious physiological changes after 3 months of feeding, this Gretel doesn't know either. He even didn't know whether the experimental subjects captured in the Emerald Dream would still be there the next time they dreamed. Alas, otherwise, how about observing it for a while? Greet set up a desk outside the breeding room, observing the pigs while writing furiously. Experiment records, experimental insights, next experimental plans, experimental plans. He was studying hard, and outside the bedroom, Cyrilla had been wandering around all day. Finally, She couldn't bear it anymore and rushed to drag Elder Fahim over. "Elder, look at him. He hasn't left his room for 2 days and 2 nights. He will starve to death if he continues like this." "Well, don't worry." Elder Fahim raised his head and looked at the sky. The morning light was dim and the dew was clear. If Gretel fell asleep last night, then he had slept for more than 48 hours. It's a bit long, but not too long. As for starving to death, to be honest, a level 14 nature walker will starve to death if he doesn't eat or drink for 48 hours. If it doesn't exist, it won't exist even if you add another 0. He raised his hand and flicked it, and the bedroom door suddenly opened and floated to the side silently. Elder Fahim took a step forward, turned his mental power slightly, and immediately smiled. "It's okay, it's okay." He was probably doing research or something in the Emerald Dream, and it took a little longer. He raised his arm and stopped Cyrilla. Stepping forward again, I saw Gretel lying flat on the bed, breathing softly and slowly, as if nothing. Cyrilla listened carefully and felt that his breathing had more than doubled and his heartbeat had become extremely slow. She pulled the elder's arm again. "Elder, look at him." I know, the elder continued to pat her with a smile. "It's okay. He is surrounded by the power of nature, and his body's needs are also supplied by the power of nature. That's it, don't be afraid." Cyrilla still held on to him. The elder lowered his eyes and concentrated, sensing Greet's condition for a while. He raised his other hand, flexed his 5 fingers, and tapped the void 3 times. "Wake up." Gretel jumped up like a carp. As soon as he opened his eyes, he saw Elder Fahim looking at him with a smile. Behind him, Cyrilla revealed half of his snow-white face, half happy and half sad. "Gretel, wake up. You've been sleeping for so long. Are you hungry? Let's go eat." I don't." "Gilug." Obviously, Gretel's belly has a mind of its own. Cyrilla was so proud that she dragged Gretel and rushed to the dining hall. As soon as he ran in, he raised his voice and shouted, "Meat! Meat! I want to eat meat. Gretel has been hungry for 2 days. Give us meat quickly. Come on, there are many such starving ghosts in the Magic Academy, especially the soldiers, who are more fierce than the others when they grab the meat and eat it." Not long after she finished shouting, Grandma Paria held 2 large dinner plates and walked up to the 2 of them with 2 bangs. "Here, meat, big chunks. Eat as much as you like, there's not enough. As soon as the lid is lifted, the heat and aroma hit your face." Gretel leaned back reflexively, and then he saw clearly that on the plate was a big elbow as thick as the mouth of a bowl. It was golden red in color, with a soft skin that was trembling as if it was about to flow down at any time. The big elbow was bent upside down on the plate, and the height of the bones was already at the same level as his eyes. "Well, can you change it to something else, like a fish or something? I've eaten too much pork these days." Cyrilla just screamed in joy, raised her elbow and took a bite, leaving a huge gap in the big elbow. Hearing this, he looked over quickly, with a circle of sauce on his face. "Eating pork? Gretel, when did you eat pork? We haven't eaten it these past few days." "Ah, you ate it behind my back, right? Gretel. Can I say I ate it at the Emerald Dream? Ah, can I say it? In the past few days, I have been doing experiments in the Emerald Dream and killed 5 piglets. In order not to waste, and to consolidate my understanding of the laws of nature, I have always eaten pork, and I have eaten it several times. Pagoda pork, sweet and sour pork loin, stir-fried kidney, fatty pork. In order to ensure that the natural laws operating in the Emerald Dream did not deviate from his understanding, Greet tried to make it as detailed and complicated as possible, or to have strict requirements on the heat. Even so, eating in different ways every day made him feel a little tired of the pork. Today, with such a big pig's knuckle in front of me, Gretel really wants to eat something different. Ah, I didn't eat anything. I dreamed about eating pork. Under the intense gaze of the silver dragon girl, Gretel shrank silently, then cut off a piece from the big elbow and stuffed it into his mouth. Stop it! Stop it! Stuff your mouth with food and stop talking nonsense. With Elder Fahim to consult and the sufficient natural power on Elf Island as backup, Gretel's research in the Emerald Dream progressed very quickly. In surgery, if there are enough opportunities to practice, the level of most doctors can increase rapidly. With the endless piglets in the Emerald Dream, Gretel's progress in making animal models is also rapid. Pigs with ventricular septal defects. Pigs with ventricular septal defect plus pulmonary artery stenosis. Large thoracotomy surgery, small incision surgery, minimally invasive surgery, cardiac catheterization surgery. Survive 1 day after surgery, survive 2 days, survive 1 month. Of course, Greet also paid a heavy price for this. I used to train and study during the day and sleep at night. Now I train and study during the day. As soon as I touch the pillow at night, I go to the Emerald Dream to continue my research. 24 hours of continuous rotation belongs to yes. If there was a capitalist who could exploit his employees like this, working during the day and studying by himself at night, he would laugh in his dreams. Greet himself lamented that if he had such a learning spirit in college, he would probably be able to get into a better school, instead of just taking the postgraduate entrance examination at this school. Finally, when the Lord of Thunder adjusted the magnetic field strength and began to adjust the signal accuracy, Gretel was very proud and invited several elders. Look, I've made an animal model. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geolan 2020. Chapter 1379. Can something like an animal model be made without relying on the limited wish-making technique? No one believed it when others said it, but when Greet said it, someone definitely wanted to come and take a look. Gretel was also happy to demonstrate. How tiring it was to perform this surgery. If you could teach a few people to help him make animal models, why not do it? Each elder brought several students over, plus the elves who had previously worked with Gretel, and there were a lot of elves standing outside the operating room. Everyone held their breath and watched Gretel's hands flying through the secret eye screen, and the scalpels, mage's hands, and healing spells kept falling. The piglet was placed in a supine position, and after a thoracotomy on the left side, a pericardiotomy was performed. Everyone, watch, now we have cut the pericardium and exposed the right ventricular funnel and the main pulmonary artery. The one I dyed green is the right ventricular funnel, and the one I dyed black is the main pulmonary artery. There was a gentle intake of breath. Cutting a slit in a beating heart while the heart is still beating vigorously is beyond the elves' cognition. Isn't the heart something that will die if you touch it? Why is it still jumping? Why does Gretel dare to keep operating on the beating heart? Everyone, please see clearly. Now, we pass through the pulmonary ring and clamp the pulmonary artery and right ventricular funnel longitudinally. This step is to suspend the blood flow and facilitate the following operations. At this point, the movements of the scalpel and the mage's hand suddenly became faster, so fast that the elves were dazzled. With a light stroke of the scalpel, the pulmonary artery and the small infundibular artery have been cut open longitudinally. The retractors turned into the hands of several mages immediately flew over, pulling the cut part sideways, exposing the part inside. This is a longitudinal transcircular arteriotomy, and a small infundibular arteriotomy. Now you see, the pulmonary valve leaflets, which is what I dyed blue, are exposed, and we're going to cut them out. Removal of the pulmonary valve leaflets. Release the treatment around the pulmonary artery and let it grow. The circle around the pulmonary artery is required to grow hard, strong, and fibrotic, causing the pulmonary artery to become narrow. Now, we have made a pig with pulmonary stenosis. Next, we will make a ventricular septal defect. Greet completed the set smoothly and released the healing technique, allowing the piglet's chest to heal quickly layer by layer. Clap your hands and walk out of the operating room. Now, we have an animal model. This kind of heart is still somewhat different from the big prince's heart, but it can barely be used. Raise it for a while to allow it to undergo corresponding physiological changes, and then we can study treatment methods on these animal models. The elf raised a hand high. Gretel raised his eyebrows slightly. Oops, that's good. Raise your hand first and ask questions instead of shouting directly. It seems that my reputation among these elves has already reached the level of respect. At least you have respect, right? Well, it shouldn't be enough to revere, worship like this. Please speak. He nodded in that direction. The elf who raised his hand immediately shouted. Why not use limited wishing? How nice it is to use limited wishing. With a flash of magic light, a normal pig immediately became a pig with heart disease. Convenient, clean, and safe. Unlike now, when you need to hold a knife, pliers, and retractor to make it bloody, the pig can die anytime and anywhere. Don't think they didn't notice that the piglet's breath weakened several times during the operation. Sirara immediately glared. Gretel saw her reaction out of the corner of his eye, almost laughed, and nodded to her comfortingly. Ah, first of all, of course it's because I'm poor. 1 diamond for each animal model, such a big expense, I'm really a bit soft-hearted. There were high and low coughs. Diamonds, what precious things are they to high-level mages and legends? It's a little expensive, but not to the point where you have to count the flowers one by one and feel heartbroken after spending them. Mage Nordmark, it seems that you have the authority to withdraw at least 4 pieces of legendary wealth on Evermeet Island, right? The poor child must have been used to being poor when he was a child, and is afraid of poverty. I just say that such a child should not be left outside. Let's see how he is treated in the human world. The royal family will be responsible for the cost of this project. Don't worry about the cost, it's just diamonds. You can get them from Everlasting Island. 2 replies quickly echoed from the crowd. Gretel smiled and waved his hand. Second, I'm worried about the interference between spells. It's possible to cure these animals with the limited wish spell. However, if the former limited wish spell interferes with the latter one, it will be very troublesome. After this answer was spoken, several elders in the crowd exchanged glances with each other and nodded silently. Greet said calmly. Given the difficulty of treating this kind of heart disease, I need at least 50 animal models to speculate on treatment options. Is there anyone willing to help me? The elves looked at each other. Watch Gretel do it with ease and speed. The mage's hands were changing, and the white light of the healing spell was gently smeared. It seemed that it was very simple to make one. But, think about it and do it yourself. The first step, the second step, no, I forgot. In this way, I will list the relevant steps and precautions. Anyone who wants to help can simulate it in the Emerald Dream first. Gretel also didn't want to cause random killings. He didn't want these elves to kill a large number of wild boars for no reason. He stretched his right hand to the side, the oak staff lowered its branches, and a golden oak fell into his hand. The specific content is all in this acorn. You can view it by connecting to the wisdom tree. Once you understand it, you can experiment in the Emerald Dream and it should be easier to master. The elves exchanged glances with each other. Whether you can do it or not, it's always good to learn more. Besides, when the Nordmark mage was treating the eldest prince, not only did they say they could help, but at least a few people had to understand it, right? Elder Fahim was the first to step out of the crowd and took the acorn. Immediately afterwards, several more elders came out to receive new acorns from the oak staffs. Well, the way the wisdom tree transfers knowledge is to condense the knowledge into a fruit-like entity, pick it off and give it to other plants. It seems that Gretel, the oak staff, has also learned it? Greed watched them go away, clasped his palms and bowed. With the healing skills to support it and the emerald dream to simulate it, I hope, we can at least train a few assistants, right? In my impression, the surgical treatment of tetralogy of Fallout requires the use of extracorporeal circulation at low temperature. By that time, I will be too busy on my own. When it comes time to have surgery, don't let me go through it alone. Thanks to @Scarlacy for the 500 starting coins. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1380. It is unrealistic to expect that the elves can make a pharaoh pig immediately. Not to mention making it immediately. It is a big project to read the materials compiled by Greed from beginning to end, from text to images to movable images. Greed stuffed the respiratory system, circulatory system, cardiac anatomy, electrophysiology, and a bunch of miscellaneous things into it. It is conservatively estimated that it will start at 1,000,000 words. Anyway, Gretel waited for a week, and when he made 14 pharaoh pigs, no elves had started to do it yet. On the contrary, there was an endless stream of elves coming to ask for advice. I don't understand here, I don't understand there, I understand it here, but as soon as I do the experiment in the Emerald Dream, something is wrong again. When it came to making animal models, Gretel had no choice but to do it himself. He made one in the morning and one in the afternoon. After making 14 standard versions, he started to make new designs. Ventricular septal defects are located under the pulmonary valve, under the crest, and in the membranous part. Pulmonary stenosis is simple infundibular stenosis, accompanied by pulmonary valve stenosis, or infundibular stenosis accompanied by pulmonary valve and annulus stenosis. Infundibular stenosis, pulmonary valve, annular stenosis, main pulmonary artery stenosis, pulmonary artery branch stenosis, and pulmonary atresia. Combined with pulmonary valve and right ventricular outflow tract vegetations, combined with aortic root dilation and severe aortic valve regurgitation. Combined with patent foramen ovale, combined with atrial septal defect, combined with patent ductus arteriosus, combined with coronary artery malformation. In short, use his imagination to create all the possibilities. Well, anyway, the piglets in the Emerald Dream are endless. With their support, the mortality rate of piglets in reality is not high. As for some elves asking why do we have to do so much, Gretel spread out his hands, looking innocent and confident at the same time. The examination is not complete yet. I don't know what kind of malformation His Highness the Prince's heart belongs to. Each type has its own treatment method. I have to do my best to explore all possibilities. Anyway, he was very happy undergoing surgery and experimental surgery. With the Emerald Dream as the foundation, the healing skills as a support, and it's not easy to commit suicide, that's doubly happy. As for the elves taking care of the animal models, they were under great pressure. One moment this pig stopped eating, another moment that pig was very tired, and another moment there was a pig over there that fainted. Oh, that's their business. As the leader of the project team and the person in charge of the project, he can just happily perform the surgery and leave all other troublesome matters to his subordinates. When the Lord of Thunder came to check the homework again, he saw a row of houses extending outside Gretel's laboratory. Without even getting close, you can hear the grunting, and the sounds of a row of pigs feeding inside. In other words, he, the youngest disciple, turned the laboratory into a pigsty. Should I say it's a good thing we're on Evermeet Island? If this was not on Yangju Island, but on Thunderhorn, the entire Thunder Tower would probably be nicknamed Pigpen multiple times. Teacher. Greed had already walked up to him with a smile. He leaned close to him and reported his recent study progress to the teacher. The Lord of Thunder listened patiently, and after hearing his report that 60 pigs were made recently, he finally couldn't help complaining. What are you doing with those pigs? Haven't you already made 14 of them? But, each one is different, Greet blinked. Before the Lord of Thunder could continue, he rushed to ask. Teacher, how are you doing with the magnetic field detection method? It's almost done. As a teacher, the Lord of Thunder could not bow his head in front of the students, so he answered calmly immediately. With the powerful research ability of the legendary mage, he simulates and creates electric and magnetic fields day and night in his own small world. The speed of adjustment is countless times that of Gretel's previous life. In the previous life, it would take a week or two to design the plan, calculate the detailed data of the equipment, debug the equipment, and launch another experiment. If you are unlucky and the equipment needs to be customized or sent to the factory for major modifications, you can't say whether it will take a month or a few months. But here at the Lord of Thunder, adjusting once is almost just a matter of his thoughts. Therefore, when Greet made a bunch of animal models, the Lord of Thunder also made a fuss about magnetic shock detection. At the very least, if you throw a mouse in and scan it with the magnetic field, you can feel that the internal structure is almost the same. In other words, with the powerful mental power of the legendary mage, you can outline a framework. As for how to imprint it into magic, or how to make it into a magic prop, the Lord of Thunder is still adjusting. He is a legendary mage. It's Greet's teacher. If it hadn't been for his tool man, hadn't Gretel just said teacher pitifully, he would have rushed over to scan this little guy. Really, Gretel's eyes brightened. He dragged the Lord of Thunder and walked in impatiently. Teacher, can you let me see how accurate it is? The Lord of Thunder followed him inside without any hesitation. Then Gretel gave an order, and 2 elves flew out rattan sticks from their hands, leading a row of 10 pigs over. Teacher, with this spell, can you clearly see their heart structure? You brat, are you waiting for me here? The Lord of Thunder glared at his disciple without leaving any trace. It has always been the teacher who checks the disciples' homework, but now it's the other way around. The disciples are checking the teacher's homework? However, teaching him a lesson now seemed like he had a guilty conscience. The Lord of Thunder took a breath, decided to write down the account for the time being, and raised his hand slightly. A little pig floated up with his movements. The small world opened and closed, drawing the little pig in. In the flash of a flash, there was a startling glimpse, thousands of thunders, and a snow-bright brilliance that made people breathless. Then, the Lord of Thunder stood there, concentrating slightly. Gretel looked at the teacher expectantly, thinking about speed, precision, and algorithms. Sarah looked at the Lord of Thunder a little nervously, watching him cast spells at close range. The powerful force seemed to make the entire galaxy spin in front of him. Standing so close, the scales on her tail stood up. Fortunately, the process of casting this spell is not long. After about 15 minutes, everyone's eyes lit up. The piglet was vomited out safely. The elf in charge of raising the pig quickly went up to pick up the pig, moving it up and down to check if there was any damage. Gretel quickly looked at the phantom that outlined the heart summoned by the Lord of Thunder. Teacher, you didn't see clearly enough. Look, you can't even see the heart valve. Big push will be posted at 2 p.m. tomorrow. The Dreams and Beliefs of the Author of Gideon, a big recommendation. Thank you everyone for allowing me to adjust for so long. Now that I have been promoted, Mau Mau has decided to add more updates one after another starting from tomorrow. So, starting tomorrow, Cat will work hard to achieve 6,000 words a day. Hold on, come on. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Giolan 2020. Chapter 1381. The Lord of Thunder glared at Gretel. Gretel looked up at the Lord of Thunder. Wink, wink, Wink sweetly. Teacher, look at this heart valve, you really can't see clearly. The amount of sugar in the voice definitely tipped over the honeycomb and doubled the sugar in the honey. The Lord of Thunder couldn't help but want to frown. If he were elsewhere, he would have scolded. You're such an adult, still acting like a spoiled brat. You are already a 14th level high-level mage, not those 4th level guys who just left school and ran around everywhere. Well, it seems that the little guy at level 4 hasn't arrived yet. But looking around, he swallowed the scolding. Gretel looked at him longingly, and the silver dragon girl looked at him longingly. Forget it, the elves standing around respectfully looked at Gretel eagerly. Although unlike those in Nevis, where most mages wear level badges, their aura indicates that they are level 15, 16, 17, 18, or even a half-legendary powerhouse. In front of these people, you still have to save some face for your disciples. Well, it's definitely not because it's the territory of elves and it's not easy to spank children. Do you need to see it so clearly? After a thought, the Lord of Thunder finally decided to return to the topic and asked in a deep voice. Indeed, for a healer, the clearer he can see, the better, but for him, a damage dealer, the clearer he can see, the more tired he will be. When he first participated in this project, what he could see was a piece of crap that was hard to explain in words. If he hadn't accepted Greet's suggestion and tried it with an orange first, he wouldn't even be able to tell the difference between orange peel, orange segments, and orange core. Then, in order to see the mouse's head clearly, he increased the power of the magnetic field output tenfold, but he only got a blurry image. It was not clear where the eyes, the skull, and the brain were. But now, he can finally see the pig's heart clearly, and can even show the beating of the pig's heart. Little Gretel actually wants to see the valves in the pig's heart clearly. That valve thing, that thing, the Lord of Thunder tried hard to recall the information Gretel handed him. The valve seems to be a piece of the heart. Sometimes it's open, sometimes it's closed. When it's open, the blood flow can pass through, but when it's closed, the blood flow can't pass through. Do I need to see this clearly for surgery? Of course you do, Gretel proudly held out his chest. As soon as he stretched out his hand, an elf flew into the laboratory, and then flew out, holding a record book in both hands. Greet opened the record book and flicked his fingers. A secret eye passed over the pig's ear, and the numbers on the ear tag were clearly displayed. Greet flipped through the record book following the numbers on the ear tag. Number 51. Number 51 is infundibulum and pulmonary valve stenosis, combined with pulmonary valve and right ventricular outflow tract vegetations. You see, if you can't see clearly, there will be big problems during the operation. So the accuracy still needs to be improved. Keep improving, Gretel nodded firmly. In later generations of nuclear magnetic resonance, before he traveled through time, there were already 70 machines with a resolution of 0.5 mm. The commonly used commercial version in top tertiary hospitals, the 3.0T MRI, can also have a resolution of 1 mm, which means that tissues with a size of 1 mm can be clearly seen. Even if this is not possible, at least give me a 1.5T NMR. Teacher, you are a legend, you cannot be inferior to a 1.5T NMR. Teacher, the radius of the piglet's heart valve annulus is about 10 mm. If you want to see it clearly, your accuracy must be increased to at least 2 mm, not just 1 mm. Talking and gesticulating. First, use light and shadow to outline something with a radius of 10 cm, divided into 3 roughly equal fan shapes, which are constantly opening and closing. Then put a row of mosaics on top. Each mosaic grid is as big as 2 cm by 2 cm. Teacher, look, I can't see clearly like this. I can barely see the outline, whether it's not fully opened and closed, what shape it is, whether there are any growths on it, I can't see clearly at all. The Lord of Thunder's expression became serious little by little. Gretel's request cannot be said to be unreasonable, it can even be said that in order to achieve a good enough therapeutic effect, it must be seen so clearly. The problem is that with his current detection accuracy, the length of the grid even exceeds 5 mm. This has to be shrunk to a size of 2 mm, and the energy he needs to spend to cast a spell is more than 10 times. "Let me think about it," he whispered softly, "let me think about it." He lowered his eyes and thought deeply. Next to him, Greet's left foot turned to his right foot, and his right foot turned to his left foot. After waiting nervously for a long time, he whispered, "Teacher, lower the temperature." As he spoke, he held a liquid nitrogen test tube between his fingertips and shook it at the teacher. He didn't understand anything else, but the nuclear magnetic resonance machine in the previous life used liquid nitrogen and liquid helium to cool down and achieve the superconducting effect. Well, the main reason is that liquid helium is more expensive and the magnet is immersed in it, liquid nitrogen is cheaper and it is kept warm outside. In the unlikely event that a hospital is unlucky and someone has a wheelchair something vital is sucked into the machine, it has to be degaussed to remove the thing. Releasing the liquid nitrogen and liquid helium is a big project. Although he really didn't know whether liquid nitrogen or liquid helium was needed to rub electricity in the void, but lowering the temperature, and lowering the temperature to extremely low temperatures seemed to be an idea. The Lord of Thunder glanced sideways at him. Lowering the temperature can increase the power of lightning, he has known this for a long time. Starting from this point, it would be possible to increase the strength of the magnetic field, and he had also thought about it. But the problem is that this path, in his plan, ranks 5th, 6th, 8th to try. This kid, why is he so quick to talk? However, since the little guy said it, it is okay for the Lord of Thunder to put it first in the queue to try. He took a few steps outside and suddenly disappeared from where he was. The next moment, he appeared at the lakeside a few hundred meters away. Then, there were layers of huge tornadoes around him, which were sucked into him like a funnel. The clouds surged, almost covering his figure. Greet subconsciously wanted to follow him, but was grabbed by Cyrilla. The silver dragon girl stared at the figure of the Lord of Thunder hidden in the clouds, her little face tensed up, and her whole body trembled slightly. The power rising from the clouds and mist was condensed but not emitted, fierce and cold. Compared to her breath, compared to the breath of the elders in the family, it was much colder and more terrifying. Is this a legend? The Lord of Thunder was expressionless and experimented silently. The icy cold breath created by rubbing it with hands indeed greatly enhanced the strength of the magnetic field. The direction this little guy mentioned casually turned out to be really useful. A force field wall was set up, cold liquid was condensed from the air, and lightning danced in the liquid. The consumption only doubled, but the magnetic field increased more than 10 times. However, increasing the strength of the magnetic field does not mean that you can see things more clearly easily. The Lord of Thunder simulated it for a while and felt a headache. Improved accuracy means not only an increase in energy, but also a significant increase in required computing power. A very simple truth. From a cube with a side length of 3 mm, 27 cubes with a side length of 1 mm can be cut out. And to increase the accuracy from 3 mm to 1 mm, the computing power required is not 27 times. Every oscillation of the magnetic field also has a time dimension. As the magnetic field strengthens, the oscillation frequency can also increase. To find the signal he needs from the messy feedback, and finally image it, means processing more information. The Lord of Thunder stood by the lake for a long time, then suddenly waved. A palm-sized river clam flew out of the water and fell into his demi-plane. Then, the Lord of Thunder lowered his eyes silently and stood like a statue by the lake. 1 minute. 2 minutes. 5 minutes. 15 minutes. Greet walked up and down. 30 minutes. 1 hour. Gretel poked his head around. 2 hours. Gretel yawned and didn't dare to go to sleep. Teacher, how long did it take for this round of MRI? Generally speaking, a scan takes 15 minutes to half an hour, and the emergency report can be obtained in half an hour at the fastest. This is 2 hours. 2 hours. Has the teacher finished the scan and is calculating the results, or has the scan not been completed yet? Just such a small river clam. Could he go back to sleep and come back tomorrow morning to wait for the results? He is not a legend yet, he still needs a certain amount of sleep and meditation to maintain his mental state and spell slots. With such a curse in his heart, he really wanted him to go back to sleep, but Greet didn't dare. The teacher was busy with his affairs, so he went back to sleep leisurely and woke up tomorrow morning. I'm afraid I'm going to be beaten into a meat pie. Forget it, just think of it as working overtime in the emergency department, or the patient's family waiting for news outside the clinic. Among the closest family members, who can sleep at this time? After waiting for another 2 hours, the Lord of Thunder finally breathed a sigh of relief and waved to Gretel. Gretel trotted over, and sure enough, a silent phantom hung in front of the Lord of Thunder. Judging from the shape, it was exactly the same as the clamshell next to it. But the outline shape is the same. The inside of the clamshell is a mess and black, and the internal structure is basically invisible. What muscle feet, what adductor muscle, what aorta, what intestines. One can only make difficult guesses in the dark and light black mess, which is a complete test of one's spatial imagination. Gretel sighed helplessly. It's his fault, it's his fault. The signal obtained by nuclear magnetic resonance needs to undergo Fourier transformation to produce a detailed image that doctors can understand at a glance. So now the question comes. Teacher, as a legendary mage, do you understand Fourier transform? I have learned this stuff, passed it, and immediately forgotten it. If you don't understand, I really don't have the confidence to explain it to you. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geolan 2020. Chapter 1382. Gretel also wanted to ask the teacher if you knew Fourier transform. If not, I would teach you, but he didn't dare. He asked rashly, and when the time came, the teacher gave him a triple shot, and then he asked. Why is this formula called Fourier transform? Where did you learn that? How do you know this formula works? If he can't answer a single question, he's looking for death. Alas, it's all his fault for not paying attention to the progress in magic and other aspects before the council. If he had read papers frequently and noticed the Parliament's previous mathematical achievements, he wouldn't have such a headache now. There was no other way. Greet held a clamshell, a picture, and a basic signal given by the teacher, and plunged into the library of the Magic Academy. After flipping through it desperately, Greet found helplessly that at least in the records of the Elf Magic Academy and the parliamentary journals collected by the Elves, there were no records related to Fourier transformation. Then there was nothing he could do, he had to do it himself. The Silver Dragon girl quickly discovered Gretel's changes. During this time, he was buried in his study, neither reading spell books nor practicing magic. What surprised Cyrilla even more was that he didn't even have surgery. Every day, I just lie down on my desk, write, calculate, write, calculate again. The pile of manuscript papers on the desk ranges from a few thin sheets to a knuckle-thick pile. Then from a knuckle-thick pile to a half-palm-thick pile. From neatly stacked to flying everywhere, on the table, on the cabinet, on the chair, on the floor, everywhere. Greet, what are you doing? Cyrilla couldn't even get in. She stood on tiptoes, held the door open, and stuck her head in to shout. While shouting, he also gathered a force field wall to block the wind outside the door. There must not be a breath of wind blowing in. The wind blew in and messed up the manuscript paper. When Gretel turned around to look through it, he couldn't find it. It disturbed his thoughts and caused him a lot of trouble. I'm calculating. Greet raised her head weakly. His face was pale, his eyes were dull, and his bangs were flat on his forehead. Even if the power of nature nourishes him day and night, so that there are no dark circles around his eyes, the look of being crushed for 3 days and 3 nights, and hanging on the cliff for 7 days and 7 nights, still makes Cyrilla feel particularly distressed. Greet, what's wrong with you? If you can't figure it out, don't do it. Let's take a rest first, take a bath and have a full meal. Look at how you look now. Don't tire yourself out before you figure it out. Got it? It's not, I'm really fine. Gretel bared his teeth. He also studied Fourier transform and other things in college, he really studied it, advanced medical mathematics and so on, and did not skip this lesson. The problem is, there is still a huge gap between what was taught in class and what he can master now and use the formula to calculate MRI images. Not to mention, he has to explain clearly to the teacher why there is this formula, what is the essence of this formula, and what can it be used for. The Fourier transform is still a very complex formula. It has various variations in different research fields, and each variation is enough for Gretel to drink a pot. Convergence properties, symmetry properties, parity and even properties, linear properties, time shift properties, frequency shift properties, scale transformation properties, convolution theorem, time domain, frequency domain. Gretel looked gloomy and his head was as big as a bucket. Every property is described by a formula. Even if every formula is in the textbook in his previous life, he has to figure it out by himself. Oh, it's so difficult for him. Gretel lamented and admired the achievements of his predecessors while burying himself in his study day and night. It was so difficult for him to just follow the textbook, familiarize himself with and deduce the formulas again. How difficult was it for Fourier to create these formulas? These big guys, if they had the chance to travel through time, everyone could become a legendary mage, right? After struggling like this for a month, when the Lord of Thunder came to check his homework next time, he was finally able to take out a thin booklet and send it to the teacher. Teacher, this formula may be able to help you. The Lord of Thunder opened the book with a puzzled expression. At a glance, the first page is full of trigonometric functions, which are unremarkable. On the second page, I glanced at it again. The expansion and transformation of trigonometric functions should have been known to the little guy for a long time. Page 3, Expansions, Transformations, and Curves of Trigonometric Functions. It's a bit interesting. It seems that no one has explored this direction. I looked in and looked in. The fingers turning the pages of the book became slower and slower, and the gaze stayed focused longer and longer. On the monocle, blue light flashed crazily, and dots as fine as sesame seeds rolled at high speed. For a moment, countless numbers, formulas, and curves rushed down the monocle like a waterfall. Gretel stood beside him nervously, staring at the teacher. Teacher, if you look like this, you don't want to stand here and understand the Fourier function completely in one breath, right? Whether this book is thick or thin, it has dozens of pages. Dozens of pages, Fourier transform, various variations of Fourier transform, everything he had in the textbook in his previous life, everything he had seen elsewhere, everything he could deduce, it was all on it. Teacher, although you are a legendary mage, your mental power is extremely powerful, and your computing power is approximately equal to that of a computer, if not a supercomputer. However, even if it is a computer, it still needs to enter a program. Teacher, how many hours or days do you plan to use to figure out all these formulas? Shall we go to the study room and take a look? Let's sit and watch, okay. I deduced, oh no, copied, oh no, it took me a month to become familiar with these formulas. Teacher, you should use them in a day no matter what. Let's not be punished by standing here, okay. However, the Lord of Thunder had already stood still, looking as if he was in a state of wandering mind, with only a trace of his soul remaining on the book. Greed lamented in his heart, and could only stand respectfully and stood sideways. 10 minutes, 20 minutes, half an hour, an hour. Even though Greed had the physique of a level 14 natural priest, he still felt that his back and legs were weak and he was very tired. When the teacher wasn't paying attention, he quietly took a half step back, summoned a floating saucer, and sat on it. Looking at the teacher again, I still feel a little unsafe. After thinking for a while, he summoned a floating saucer, lay down on it, and began to demonstrate the surgical method of Farlow's quadruple pig on the spot. Well, when the teacher comes to his senses and sees me busy, he will definitely not dislike me for not standing with him. The sun's shadow slowly moves across the sky, and then slowly tilts westward. Gretel glanced at the teacher from time to time at first, but gradually he became more focused and devoted himself wholeheartedly to the surgical deduction. Heart anatomy, cardiac electrophysiology, hemodynamics, therapy, encouragement, anesthesia, the small spots and cord-like foreign bodies observed in Prince Anio's heart. Greed was writing and drawing without even looking up. The light around him gradually dimmed, and several light balls quietly rose up to illuminate him. He didn't even feel anything. I don't know how long I have been busy, but a thunderbolt broke the silence. Gretel suddenly raised his head and saw a bolt of lightning falling across the sky, shining through the sky and the earth, and in the lightning, the Lord of Thunder had disappeared. "Teacher," he raised his head reflexively and shouted. "Teacher! Teacher seems to have gone to the beach," Cyrilla whispered. Gretel raised his head in the direction she pointed, turned around and ran, crashing into the nearest tree. "Tree magic! Tree magic! Tree magic!" The nearby big trees and ancient trees opened the passage for me, allowing me to catch up in the footsteps of the teacher. "Bad Greed! You won't even take me with you," Cyrilla stamped her feet in annoyance. As a silver dragon, her affinity with nature is not as close as Gretel's, nor has she learned how to teleport through big trees. In the blink of an eye, the silver light surged, covering her whole body. The silver dragon spread its wings, flapping the strong wind, and soared into the sky. Amidst the huge wind noise, you can still hear the crisp muttering of the silver dragon, which kept coming. "Bad guy Greed! You won't even take me with you. I won't take you flying next time. I'll fly by myself and see who's faster. Maybe you can't be faster than me?" He 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 he. Gretel didn't hear her moans at all. He was so anxious that he followed the path pointed out by the ancient tree, teleported all the way, and chased after him. After chasing him to the beach, he saw the Lord of Thunder standing far above the waves, with wind and clouds surging in front of him. A huge fireball hung in front of him, spinning constantly, slowly getting smaller, smaller, smaller. From red to yellow, from yellow to white, from white to cyan, from cyan to blue, from blue to purple. The purple color became darker and darker. Gradually, Greed could no longer see the fire bead, but the majestic pressure became heavier and heavier. The sea a kilometer away was so heavy that he couldn't breathe. What happened? The wind roared behind him, and Cyrilla returned to her human form, landing lightly on the ground and next to him. Gretel shook his head blankly. "I don't know. Teacher." Who knows what inspiration the teacher got from the formula? The application scenarios of Fourier transform are very wide, including physics, number theory, combinatorial mathematics, signal processing, probability, statistics, cryptography, acoustics, optics. And initially, it was proposed as a tool for analytical analysis of thermal processes. Thermodynamics and the like are very closely related to the plastic energy system, right? Before he finished speaking, the Lord of Thunder suddenly raised his arm and made a throwing motion, then quickly retreated. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, he flashed beside Gretel, raising his hands to build barriers. There was a loud bang, and the entire sea surface suddenly dented. Then, an overwhelming shockwave rolled up huge waves and rushed towards them head-on. If the Lord of Thunder had not set up a barrier in advance, Gretel would not have dared to say that he would have been able to withstand the aftermath of this blow. "You're fine." The huge waves rolled in and out. The Lord of Thunder turned to look at Gretel. The blue light on the monocle was shining brightly, and tiny electric sparks were beating. "You should study it by yourself for a while first. Your formula has given me some ideas. Your senior brother's project is almost completed." As he spoke, his figure disappeared in a flash. Gretel was left stretching out his arms in vain, raising his head, looking towards the direction where the Lord of Thunder disappeared. "Hey, teacher, why did you run away like this when you disagreed with me? As promised, you are here to help me." "I'm here to help with the MRI. Teacher, don't run away, teacher. Return." Thanks to Tak Sol Yang for the 666 starting coins. There were 8,000 monthly passes in December and 14 extra updates were owed. There were 6,000 monthly passes in January and 10 extra updates were owed. A total of 24 monthly passes and extra updates were owed. For rewards and other rewards from all league leaders, a total of 56 rewards plus updates are owed. I owe a total of 80 extra updates, and today is the first one. The cat will definitely return it. Claw. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1383. Chapter 1378. Master, it's not good, the senior brother has been. The Lord of Thunder is gone and never returns. Greet stood on tiptoes and stretched out her arms, but did not wait for the teacher to turn around. I had no choice but to hang my head and slowly return to my laboratory accompanied by the Silver Dragon girl. As if God still disliked him for being miserable enough, the next day, another piece of shocking news hit Greet directly. "You should study the problem of heart detection by yourself first." The visitor held a green leaf and used the power of nature to stimulate it. The green leaves vibrated gently, and the voice of the Lord of Thunder came out. "I will be busy with your senior brother for a while first. When the Well of Eternity is restarted, I will trouble you again." Gretel? Teacher, wait. That's the Well of Eternity. If I'm not mistaken, it's a nuclear reactor, a nuclear power plant. Although you have used an indescribable method to create a nuclear explosion, in the history of previous lives, nuclear reactors were 3 years earlier than the atomic bomb, but nuclear reactors are not that easy. Teacher, how long do you want to spend on the nuclear reactor? The elves have been working on it for thousands of years and haven't figured it out yet. They have only created a product that keeps leaking. Teacher, don't waste hundreds of years on it. If I really want to delay it for so long, I will just do the follow-up of Fourier transform. I won't tell you any more. Anyway, Fourier transform only simplifies imaging, or speeds up the calculation of signals, and there are still a lot of difficult problems behind it. As for those difficult problems, let alone giving answers, I don't even know where those questions are, at all. Gretel was murmuring these words in his heart. Even if I asked him to drag the Lord of Thunder back, he would not do it. The Well of Eternity is restarted, what a big deal that is. How long have the elves been waiting for? It can really be safely restarted, and the mysterious locks on the sea can have enough energy. Those elves who patrol every day, and those who block the door of the Great Rift every day, can breathe a big sigh of relief. The nuclear magnetic resonance only concerns the eldest prince, and the Well of Eternity concerns all the elves on Everlasting Island. The life of ordinary elves is also life. He had no choice but to be patient, slowly make animal models, slowly observe, and slowly conduct treatment experiments in the Emerald Dream. While experimenting, he pricked up his ears and inquired about what his senior brother was saying. How far has it progressed? Have you observed the products of uranium fission? Have you obtained any new radioactive elements? Has the critical experimental device been built? If these foundations are laid, then you can try to build a stable reactor. By the way, more importantly, during the research process, what insights can senior brother gain, what spells can he comprehend, and can he go one step further and step directly into the legend? Having come all the way to work on Yangju Island is definitely not coming to help with an internationalist attitude. If you can't advance directly by relying on the research conditions of Yangju Island, it will be a loss. Gretel looked forward to the stars and the moon. However, the elves regard the matter of the Well of Eternity as extremely important, and they keep it secret extremely strictly, not disclosing any information to the outside world. If Greed had been shameless enough to get involved in the Well of Eternity project team, he wouldn't have been kicked out. But people like him sit at home and wait for the news to flow to their ears automatically. That is destined to be impossible to get any first-hand information. So Gretel waited and waited, hoped and hoped, looking for the stars and the moon. After looking forward and looking forward, I finally received a command from the teacher. Come to the Well of Eternity tomorrow. Ah. A nuclear reactor is about to ignite so soon? Teacher, have they made a major breakthrough? Gretel was so excited that he took Sarah with him and arrived at the scene half an hour early. As soon as you enter through the stone door under the roots of the world tree, you can see people coming and going. Everyone's face is tense, as if they can bounce with a little poke. Mage Nordmark? Please go this way. Mage Nordmark? Please take this door. After entering, go all the way to the end without turning. Mage Nordmark, right? Please wait here for a moment while we inform you. Greet was very suspicious. If it weren't for the fact that he had an obvious human appearance, and the appearance of Sarah next to him was too prominent, he could be recognized at a glance. They didn't know how many checks they would have gone through along the way. Well, of course, the elves will not verify by checking ID cards, fingerprints, or scanning faces and pupils. However, there may be methods such as mental power scanning and energy property verification. Well, maybe that's what the door frame and the invisible spell fluctuations in the corridor were for when you came in? In short, Gretel went smoothly and followed the guidance of the elves to the end. As soon as he stepped into the door, he almost took a step back, knocking Sarah out of the door, but was pushed by the silver dragon girl from behind. Wrong turn? In the room, there are blue sky, white clouds, and swaying tree shadows. The stream happily rushed down and formed a clear pool in front of the stone table. In the pool, there were translucent shrimp swimming around. Haven't you stepped through the portal just now? There shouldn't be such a scenery in the middle of the mountain, among the roots of the world tree, right? Even if there is a cave, it should be a beam of light coming from a high place, and there should not be a large expanse of blue sky. After calming down and looking carefully, the teacher was sitting on the edge of the pool with her back to him. A beautiful elf woman was beside him. She raised her head and smiled at them. It was Princess Norrel. The two people's bodies were intertwined with subtle spell fluctuations. Those blue skies, those white clouds, those tree shadows, those clear pools, and even the splashing water are all the teacher's illusions. The leaves, aquatic plants, small fish, and shrimps, those vivid natural forces, are all created by Princess Norrel. It was obviously two people working together, but when these spells blended with each other, there was no conflict at all. The blue sky, white clouds, tree shadows, and clear pool support the movements of creatures very well. And the breath of life is like the finishing touch, adding a touch of agility to the whole scene. Teacher, how long have you and Her Highness the Princess worked together to achieve such a tacit understanding of spellcasting? During these days, you won't spend all your free time practicing spells with Her Royal Highness, right? Greet showed a respectful smile and bowed to the princess. His eyes turned to the teacher's back, and before he could speak, he heard the Lord of Thunder say in a deep voice, "Come over." "Why?" Gretel responded and hurried forward. 5 steps, 4 steps, 3 steps, still 3 steps away from the Lord of Thunder, I heard the sound of water splashing in the pool, and a large splash of water flew up. The water drops hang in the air, condensing but not scattering, turning into a flowing water mirror. The next moment, the busy figure of Archmage Baebo appeared in the water mirror. One last inspection of the wall of eternity. Intact. No leaks. No weaknesses. Check the energy circuit. The circuit is smooth. The response speed is normal. Check the cooling circuit. The heat dissipation circuit is normal. Orders were shouted out one after another, and elves rushed to respond. Even though Greed had no idea about reactors, he could still see that the senior brother was very confident and was completely familiar with the structure of the entire Well of Eternity. He quietly took 2 steps sideways and glanced at the Lord of Thunder's face. Sure enough, the teacher nodded slightly, with an invisible arc on his lips. "Ah, I hope everything goes fine this time." Every command and every response came quickly, so even though the process was long, Gretel didn't feel bored. He stood behind the teacher and stared for a long time, and finally waited for a voice. "The Well of Eternity restarts, let's begin." At the command, Gretel's breathing tightened quietly. He glanced at the teacher subconsciously and saw that the teacher was still sitting on the edge of the pool, leaning back relaxedly on the back of the chair. Next to him, the entrance to the demi-plane was looming. "Ah, does this mean that if something goes wrong, you can put me on board and run away together? Or is it just a matter of chance to install me, and the most important thing is to install the elf princess?" Greet glanced quickly and then looked into the water mirror. After the restart started, several legendary elders around Archmage Baebo each took a step forward. With flying hand gestures, mysterious spell runes came out one by one and disappeared. There may or may not be feedback, but either way, Greet can't see. All he could see was that the elders nodded to each other and looked at Archmage Baebo. The senior brother took a deep breath, stepped forward, grabbed a long pole in front of him, and pressed down hard. A layer of mist instantly formed on the edge of the water mirror. The mist spread inward little by little, like causing ripples on a water mirror, making Archmage Baebo's figure blurry. Gretel glanced at the Lord of Thunder subconsciously, but saw the teacher crossing his fingers and nodding relaxedly. Very smooth. Before he finished speaking, another 3-dimensional image unfolded over the pool. In the center of the image, a blazing white light suddenly appeared, rushing like a whirlpool. After 2 circles, the water level of the tide of light became higher and higher, and finally, it quickly poured out along the pipe. The first level of magic circle is activated. The second level magic circle is activated. The 3-layer magic circle is activated. Guide the volcanic energy to rise. Energy pool connection. Introducing the mystery lock. In the main control room, shouts came and went. Greet just stared at the blazing white light steadily, watched it rise to a high level, watched it remain stable, watched its light color and occupied area remain unchanged. Is this the stable rhythm of the Well of Eternity Center, or in other words, the nuclear reactor center? Didn't it ignite and then suddenly go out? Didn't the energy suddenly increase and then decrease, suddenly disappear, and suddenly explode again? What is the principle of this display? It is not necessary to throw the probe directly into the furnace, right? Greet observed the image several times and then looked at the teacher, but still couldn't figure it out. Suddenly, Archmage Baebo in the center of the water mirror raised his arms and whispered a few words quickly. The elders present looked at each other. A silver-haired elder stepped out from the crowd, summoned a door of light, pulled Archmage Baebo and threw him into the door. The light door closed as soon as it appeared, and immediately, heavy pressure surged down from the top of the head. "Gretel, teacher, it's not good, the senior brother was captured by them. Thanks to @SKTZH666 for the reward of 13,500 starting coins. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Jialan 2020. Chapter 1384. Greet looked at the teacher, half nervous and half excited. I saw the Lord of Thunder slowly stand up, first half turned his body gracefully, and stretched out a hand to the princess. The princess smiled slightly, stretched her left arm, and her slender palm gently fell into the palm of the Lord of Thunder, and was held weakly by him. Then, thousands of electric lights converged into a light gate, which slowly opened in front of the Lord of Thunder. The Lord of Thunder moved forward and came to the door. Suddenly he turned to Gretel and shouted, "What are you still doing? Follow me." "Gretel, I'm not in a daze, I'm just trying to stop following so closely, making light bulbs or something, doesn't it seem unethical?" "Forget it if you don't follow. You can go to the top of the tree by yourself." As he was organizing his words, the Lord of Thunder had already taken the beauty's hand and stepped through the lightning door diligently. Sirara couldn't wait to jump over. Before she could turn around and wave to Gretel, the room went dark. The blue sky and white clouds, the blue pool and clear stream, the lightning light gate, and the Lord of Thunder behind the light gate disappeared without a trace. Greet was left alone, standing in the heavy, empty stone room with no table or stool. After a little exploration of my mental power, I found that it was difficult to detect a relatively far place. After a closer look, I found that the middle of the stone was covered with thick lead. "Humph. If you don't take me away, I'll go by myself." Gretel turned around and rushed out. He ran for a while, found the nearest world tree root, and directly put his hand on it. "Take me there. Take me to the top of the tree." Tree teleportation uses ancient trees to teleport, theoretically teleporting from one tree to another. However, for a world tree that is too huge, as long as it is recognized by the world tree itself, it is not impossible to teleport directly from the root of the world tree to the top of the world tree. World tree loves me. If I ask him to do something, he will definitely be willing. Sure enough, after the thought was passed on, Gretel rushed forward and jumped into the roots of the tree. The soft power of nature embraces me, and my eyes darken and then light up, and the next moment, blue sky, white clouds, sunlight, and sea breeze blow in my face. The Lord of Thunder turned his back to him, standing on the edge of the top of the world tree. Sarala quickly turned around, her eyes lit up when she saw him, and she waved to him quickly. "Come over. Come over." He just opened his mouth and made no sound. I don't know if he was frightened by the majesty of the Lord of Thunder and didn't dare to make any noise to disturb him. Greet stood on tiptoes, walked over quickly, stood next to her and looked around. Far, far away, between the sea and the sky, a flying boat flew through the clouds and fog. Plow a deep trench in the sea of clouds, rush to the farthest point, suddenly pause, and a flower flies out from above. The flowers are as big as a plate and as colorful as clouds, blooming in layers. After everything was fully deployed, a person slowly stepped out of the flying boat, stepped on the flowers, and drifted far into the sea of clouds. The airship instantly folded outwards, flicked its tail, drew a beautiful arc in the sea of clouds, and turned back far away. It was so fast, as if something was biting its tail from behind. As soon as it left, the entire sea of clouds solidified inexplicably around the flower. The scope of the solidification is getting bigger and bigger, and the fluctuating clouds seem to be smoothed by some inexplicable force. With the flower as the center point, they solidify into a disk. The entire sea of clouds is as flat as a mirror, reflecting the skylight and cloud shadows one by one. This strange and beautiful scenery gives people endless pressure. Even standing on the top of the world tree, Gretel felt a little tight in his chest and unconsciously took 2 steps behind the Lord of Thunder. "What are you hiding from? Watch carefully." Although the Lord of Thunder had his back turned to him, he waved his hand as if there were eyes on the back of his head. A large transparent hand, I don't know which version of the force field hand it was, directly dragged Gretel out and faced the sea of clouds. Advanced Legends, especially Magician Advanced Legends, the opportunity to observe it is very rare. If you don't take a good look now, are you going to explore it with your eyes closed in the future? Gretel wanted to say, I've seen it once, but the advancement route of a warrior like Idion is obviously different from the advancement route of a mage, and cannot be used as a reference at all. He also had the intention to retort, it doesn't matter, the will of the world will take care of me. However, even he did not dare to say that the will of the world could take care of him to this extent and ensure that he would advance to legend safely. Just look at that flying boat. After rushing out for a certain distance, didn't it stop near the coastline and plan to find a good position and watch it closely? Gretel stood beside the teacher honestly. I took an eagle-eye shot for myself and looked into the distance. The mirror-like disk of cloud shadows expanded to hundreds of times the diameter of the flowers, and finally stopped expanding. After pausing for a while, the surrounding white clouds suddenly seemed to be attracted by a giant whale and threw themselves towards the disk crazily. Layers upon layers, with the flower and the figure on the flower as the center, a 2D flat disk is wrapped into a 3D sphere. After being wrapped into a ball, the sea of clouds has not stopped and continues to surge inward. The wind and clouds were moving, and the white clouds condensed into dark clouds, wisps, flakes, and pellets, rubbing against each other. Gradually, lightning flashed between different cloud groups, and faint thunder sounded. Gretel watched nervously. Gathering clouds to generate electricity is a commonly used method in the plastic energy system, especially lightning branch magic. It is more commonly used when attacking in a large area. However, senior brother gathered so many clouds and caused thunder and lightning. Don't hit yourself, right? Senior brother is not specialized in thunder and lightning, he is specialized in heat and rays, from Yanjian explosion to eternal blazing sun. He glanced at the Lord of Thunder subconsciously, as if he wanted to see the promise I will save him if something goes wrong on the teacher's face. However, the teacher stared straight ahead, motionless, unable to get his signal at all. Greed had no choice but to retract his gaze and continue to look forward on tiptoe. After looking for a while, he suddenly exclaimed, "Ah! This!" The entire sea of clouds began to churn violently. White clouds and dark clouds condensed into balls, with flowers and figures in the flowers as the center, piled into a bowl of 2-color yuanxiao balls made of white glutinous rice and blood glutinous rice. The white clouds were spitting lightning, and the black clouds were silent and silent. No 2 clouds of the same color are next to each other, as if they repel each other. The clouds of different colors are crowded together and very dense, forming a rough ball. Inside the big ball, there are many small balls, floating up and down, spitting out electric light. With the big ball as the center, it moves at high speed in a spherical orbit, like a planet orbiting the sun. It's just that the speed is obviously countless times faster than the planet. How is it going? Cyrilla has already appeared in the shape of a dragon, with all her silver scales spread out, feeling and breathing in the surrounding atmosphere. Obviously, the silver dragon girl also seized the opportunity to accumulate the qualifications for her own advancement. However, just relying on the perception of breath without theoretical support is still a bit like a layman's entertainment. Seeing this scene, she couldn't help but stretched out her head and kissed Gretel, almost pushing him off the world tree. Is it okay? Is it going well? Maybe, it should, go well. Greed hesitated. The scene that the senior brother created now is somewhat similar to the internal structure of an atom. Protons and neutrons are closely together and bound by the strong nuclear force, electrons run at high speed outside the nucleus, and sometimes escape, leaving the atom in an ionic state. Oh, it's the orbit of electrons. Based on senior brother's understanding, it's probably a round ball. This is different from the electron cloud he knows. Although the electron cloud is just a guess. By the way, what kind of element is this atomic nucleus summoned by senior brother? There are so many protons and neutrons piled together that I can't even count them all. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 35, 36, 37, oh no, the clouds moved and the counting was messed up again. Greet was thinking wildly when layers upon layers of cloud pills suddenly appeared in the sea of clouds. Each cloud pellet is composed of large piles of dark clouds and white clouds, and within each cloud pellet, there is a bright electric light. Gretel's heart was beating wildly. What are you doing, senior brother? What are you simulating? Suddenly, a ray of golden light shot out from the flowers and hit the cloud pellet closest to it. The cloud pill exploded with a bang and split into two halves. One of the black clouds was thrown out and continued to shoot at the nearby cloud pill. Immediately afterwards, it exploded, black clouds shot out, exploded again, and black clouds shot out again. In a moment, the clouds and shadows in the sky had been turned into chaos. Between the white clouds and black clouds, the thin clouds and electric light were dyed red at some point and burned fiercely. That's it, Gretel jumped up. That's it? Teacher, have you figured it out? Do you know what this is? The Lord of Thunder looked at him strangely. The little guy is pretty good. I have been studying the heart these days, and I still have time to follow up on the progress here. Although the little guy can see their information and papers as long as he comes over, he hasn't been here much recently. Now you can see it clearly at a glance. It can be seen that a lot of effort has been put into this. He is really a natural seed of plastic energy. Well, when I have time in the future, I must urge him to make up more lessons. Of course I know. This is Gretel suddenly bit down as the words reached his lips. It's so scary that I almost said the word chain reaction. Teacher, did they give this thing a name? If so, was it called this name? He searched his mind, thinking about how to deal with the Lord of Thunder's inquiry. However, it soon became apparent that it was a no-brainer. The cloud shadows in front suddenly exploded, and the wind and thunder rolled outwards, revealing a clear blue sky. The clouds disappeared, the flowers fell, and there was only one person standing in the sky, with strange lights and shadows constantly appearing around him. Protons, neutrons, electrons, the rotation of atomic nuclei, the rotation of electrons, various rays. The light and shadow are layered upon each other, constantly expanding and contracting, as if the whole world is echoing it. When it reaches its limit, it suddenly shrinks rapidly, and then suddenly explodes. A blazing fireball burst into the air. The earth shook, the mysterious rainbow-colored ring sunk inward, and the treetops of the world tree swayed violently. When everything was quiet, Gretel saw a mushroom cloud rising slowly in the very far-away sky. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Giolan 2020. Chapter 1385. There was an explosion, causing alarm in all directions. In the center of the exploding sea of clouds, a huge hole spread outwards. Looking down from the top of the world tree, below the hollow, even the sea water dented a huge hemisphere, and then fought back crazily. The mysterious lock on the edge of Yangju Island dented hard inward, then rebounded outward. As the mystery oscillated, countless birds fluttered their wings and hurried to the seaside. Among them, a large number of them are high-level nature walkers among the elves. We must quickly relocate our compatriots living on the coast to prevent them from being injured by the tsunami. Not to mention, large swaths of elves appeared in mid-air and on the tree-tops. There are high-level spellcasters and legendary warriors. The legendary spellcasters are all in position and ready to fight. A green light flashed from the top of the world tree, and the queen suddenly appeared with a serious face and a scepter in hand. Seeing her appear, Princess Norrell quickly threw away her hand, took 3 steps and 2 steps, and moved to the side. This time the Well of Eternity restarted. The entire elves had already paid 120,000% of their attention. Archmage Baebo may make progress and enter the legend this time, and he has notified them in advance. Therefore, the elf elders responded in time, took him to teleport quickly, and opened the flying boat to send the person to the sea. However, even if it was sent to the sea, no one would think of advanced legend. Is there such a big movement? In order to stabilize the mysterious lock on the island, in order to stabilize the magic circle on the island, in order to protect the compatriots, or simply to watch the excitement, almost all high-level spellcasters and legends have appeared. Gretel stared at the mushroom cloud in a daze, unable to move for a long time. There is a saying, certain things, what you see on TV, what you see in movies, and what you see in reality are completely different concepts. Even if you have seen it in reality, seeing someone who is irrelevant and extremely powerful can be manipulated, and seeing one of your own people being manipulated are completely different concepts. For example, when he saw Virakaka, the sun god, rolling out a big fireball at the edge of the holy lake and on the top of the snowy peak, followed by a mushroom cloud, Gretel opened his mouth wide and his body became stiff for a while. And when I saw the senior brother who was preparing to advance with all his strength, after taking the shape of an atomic nucleus, a big fireball suddenly exploded, followed by a mushroom cloud. Gretel. Big brother. Senior brother, how are you? Senior brother. You wouldn't follow the rules, turn into a ball of uranium, and then perform a nuclear explosion on the spot, would you? If you really explode, how can I be worthy of you, worthy of the teacher, worthy of the Thunderhorn, and worthy of the entire Magic Council? What are you thinking about? A cold snort suddenly rang in his ears, interrupting his running thoughts. When Gretel came back to his senses, he saw the clouds in front of him converge, the light and shadow drifting, and the image of the atomic nucleus and surrounding electrons recondensed. Immediately afterwards, the shape of the atomic nucleus began to change continuously. 1 proton and 1 neutron, 2 protons and 2 neutrons, 3 protons and 4 neutrons. The number continues to grow, the size of the atomic nucleus continues to increase, and the surrounding electrons continue to expand outward from a few to 2. Gretel muttered silently in his heart. Hydrogen, helium, lithium, beryllium, boron, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, fluorine and neon, sodium, magnesium, aluminum, silicon and phosphorus, sulfur, chlorine, argon, potassium and calcium. Well, let me see to what extent the Parliament has reached in its search for elements and its exploration of the mysteries of the atomic nucleus. Hey, it seems that no one has found fluorine yet. While thinking about it, he watched the shapes of atomic nuclei in the sky changing constantly. Changing and changing, suddenly it stopped, and the sky was filled with light, and various atoms began to quickly converge and combine. Converging into a rough sphere, converging into various molecules, converging into single substances, converging into various objects. Finally, it became smaller and smaller, gathered inward, and turned into a small point, disappearing into the void. The next moment, there was a bright light in the void, and someone stepped out, standing on the flowing clouds and sea breeze, wearing hunting clothes. Big brother. Greet said happily. Not bad, not bad. Judging from this calm look, senior brother has advanced successfully. While shouting, he raised his ears, and sure enough he heard a very short, very weak gasp. Well, the teacher is indeed worried. Even if he is 99% sure, he still has to see someone show up before he can breathe a sigh of relief. On the Hongqiao, on the edge of the misfortune, on the Lin Tao, legendary figures disappeared quietly one by one. Archmage Baebo looked down, summoned a cloud of flowing clouds, and quickly flew towards the world tree on the clouds. The cloud waves rolled and flew until they reached the sky above Yangju Island. Only then did Archmage Baebo abandon the clouds and fly quickly. After several consecutive flashes, he landed on the top of the world tree and shouted respectfully, "Teacher! Success!" The Lord of Thunder asked in a low voice with his indifferent face unchanged for thousands of years. Archmage Baebo looked happy. "Yes, I have advanced to legend. My legendary spell is dash." Speaking of which, the Lord of Thunder raised a hand and interrupted him. Then, the Lord of Thunder turned around, smiled and nodded to the queen behind him. "My disciple was promoted and disturbed Yangju Island. I am really sorry. If there is anything we can do to compensate, we are obliged to do so." "This is completely unnecessary," the queen smiled slightly. "This smile is like a glacier thawing and spring flowers blooming, naturally bringing out the warmth of the spring breeze. You all came to Yangju Island and helped us solve the problem of restarting the Well of Eternity. Our clan has benefited a lot. Moreover, being able to observe the advancement of a half-step legend has also been a great inspiration to us. Well, it's hard to say whether there is enlightenment or something." Greet stood behind the teacher, glanced at his senior brother, and then at Her Royal Highness the Princess, who had moved a little further away, and silently cursed. A spellcaster who has not done any research on atoms and nuclei, even if he sees this strange phenomenon in the sky, he is probably just a layman watching the fun. As for how helpful it is to your own research and advancement, if it's in the wrong direction, it probably won't be of any help. And, Her Majesty the Queen, look where your daughter has retreated. If you stand here for a little longer, your daughter will probably jump off the top of the world tree." Fortunately, the queen was also very discerning. After expressing her congratulations, she excused herself from being busy with government affairs and left. As soon as she left, the princess also left. The Lord of Thunder took his disciples back to the study, and then had time to listen to Archmage Baebo. "My advanced spell is the explosion just now. The current attack power is roughly equivalent to the stack of the minimum number of ores, and the attack distance is about 2 kilometers, activation time. If you are empty-handed, it is probably at this level. If there are enough refined ores as casting materials, the attack power can be further increased, but the casting distance cannot be increased for the time being. Reducing power, delayed explosions, etc. still need to be studied." Gretel bared his teeth and trembled as he listened. "Senior brother, your legendary spell is translated as the rhythm of uranium-235 reaching the critical value and directly detonating. The direct killing radius is 1 kilometer, and the attack range is 2 kilometers. It's not bad, at least it doesn't reach the level of 500 meters range, 800 meters explosion radius. The question is, does this spell of yours cause any subsequent radiation damage? What is the range of radiation damage? The distance is only 2 kilometers, can you escape by yourself?" The Lord of Thunder is already quite satisfied. He tapped the table gently, pondered for a while, and said slowly, "This power is already comparable to the full blow of an ordinary legendary mage. If the power cannot be increased temporarily, there is no need to worry. That ore has a great impact on the human body, so you can use it as little as possible. Regarding the spell range enhancement and spellcasting control of legendary level spells, there are several books you can read. The most important thing is to understand the principle of this spell. There are still many things we don't understand about the mysteries of atoms. Also, after becoming a legend, you need to pay attention to some issues when your demi-plane expands. The first is the fit between the demi-plane and this world, and secondly, some materials unique to the stable demi-plane." Archmage Baebo nodded repeatedly. If the caster hadn't been mentally strong, he would have almost taken out a notebook to record it on the spot. Greet stayed nearby, listening to the Lord of Thunder smoothly pronounce a series of book titles, almost wanting to hide his ears and run away. Learning is lifelong learning. When you reach the level of legend, you still need to keep learning, researching, and making progress without being lazy at all. Just like a doctor, graduating, getting a medical certificate, and passing the required training is just the beginning. In a long medical career, you must continue to research and track the latest industry developments. Even if he becomes a chief physician, he cannot relax for a moment. Of course, it is too early for Gretel to learn this knowledge about the legend. He can just write it down silently and stuff it into the core of meditation for storage. What he is more concerned about, apart from where to find the demi-plane materials of his senior brother, is a field related to himself. When the Lord of Thunder finished giving instructions to his disciples and asked Gretel if he had any questions, he couldn't wait to ask. "Senior brother, wouldn't it be convenient for you to let me take some samples and test the chromosomes again?" The legendary chromosome. Comparison of chromosomes between the half-step legend and the legendary stage. What a rare opportunity, it's so easy to get it again now, don't seize it. Maybe, my legendary road depends on this. Okay. Archmage Baebo opened his mouth very generously, allowing Gretel to fly out a mage's hand and scrape away some epithelial cells from his mouth. The Lord of Thunder looked at Gretel taking it seriously and put the samples away. He didn't have any other questions to ask, so he couldn't help but look at him. "That's all you think about?" "Of course. Otherwise, why would I ask? Nucleus structure? Chain reaction? Or electronic cloud? I have long memorized these things from the books in my previous life, and I have no way to get involved in the research in this life. I have no way of asking questions." However, under the teacher's increasingly fierce gaze, Gretel could only search for a question to ask. "After thinking about it, I can only think of one thing." "Then, teacher, what is the legendary title of senior brother?" "Nuclear Peace Angel? The Lord of Nuclear Explosions? The Eternal Phoenix? You can't really call him the Lord of Mushrooms." Thanks to @bookfriend 202205240019555695 for the 100 starting coins.